Welcome back, and thanks for joining me again in this section of compute services. We are going to cover Elastic Cloud Compute here, also called as EC2. We'll just cover the very basics of compute here. So, what are the components or the basic components of a computer? So first thing is something that we already are very much familiar with at this point, and that is the operating system. So typically you're going to see Windows or Linux operating systems when you talk about Amazon Web Services. But out in the world, there are different kinds of operating systems that we use for personal reasons as well as for businesses. So we use Windows, Linux, Mac operating systems, and other flavors of Windows like Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8, and then different flavors of Linux, including Red Hat, Fedora, and CentOS. And there are lots of other operating systems as well. And then, depending on the kind of application you're running, you may be choosing a particular operating system. So, the operating system is something that communicates with the hardware, and that will then allow all the applications to perform their tasks. In the hardware section, you got the CPU, which is the most important function, which is like the brain. So the CPU does all that processing for the tasks. So all the thinking of your computer is done by the CPU. And then we have hard drives. So the hard drive is where the data is stored. So whenever data is processed, it is done by the CPU, and then it passes it off to hard drive for keeping it safe for longer duration. So hard drive is your storage, so the data goes right inside the hard drive. Now there are different kinds of storage as well. You got the local storage, which is connected to your computer directly, and then there is remote storage, which is far off from your computer, which you will retrieve when you need it. In organizations, people use a central place where you're going to keep all of that data remotely and safely. So that was about the CPU, you got the hard disk, and then what you'll also need is something that can help you connect to the network. It could be intranet or it could be internet. So we need the network adapter or the network card to provide that internet access. So the network adapter could be your Ethernet based, where we put the cable in, or it might be Wi-Fi based. But the goal or the objective is just to have that communication established to other computers in the network or remote networks. So once you get access to the internet, you're going to need a firewall. The firewall is responsible for helping to block unauthorized or undesirable access to your computer. Maybe a virus or malware is something that you want to keep away from your computer. So several operating systems have the operating system level firewall installed. So as an example, in Windows, you got the Windows firewall. In the Linux operating systems, you got something like IP tables. So we use these firewalls again to help block undesirable or any kind of malicious activity from accessing your computer. Okay, so there are three things. One is the CPU, and you got the hard disk, and then the network adapter. What you'll also need is the RAM. The RAM is the random access memory, and that's where the data is processed by your computer. So before the data is processed, it goes into the memory. The memory then hands it off to the CPU for actual processing. Think of RAM as a short-term memory. The hard drive or the storage is a long-term memory. So all kinds of data goes into the memory first before it gets processed by the CPU, and the CPU then pushes it off to the storage for long-term processing. So these are really basic components that make up the computer, and we'll take these components and use that when we're trying to learn about AWS. The Elastic Cloud Compute instance comprises of all of these different entities that we're talking about. So the EC2 instance has the memory, has the storage, has the network adapter, and also the RAM. And that's what you pay for when you provision an EC2 instance in AWS. In the upcoming lessons, we're going to talk more about EC2s, start provisioning them. You might have seen a bit in the previous chapter, but here we're going to take a deep dive and understand what EC2s are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.